Hey everybody, I was diving in a little deeper this week into the session players, specifically the keyboard, because I wanted to find out exactly what some of the settings did that I've been using. Now, I kept on thinking, I totally understand exactly what's happening here with the right hand voicing. This is where we have the two voice fixed interval, the two voice common tone, three voice common tone, full chord fixed inversion, four plus voice, and four plus voice fixed inversion. And at first glance, I mean, I've had music theory at the university level a number of years. I understand how chord progressions work. I don't compose in every style all the time and use them on a regular basis, but I have a good understanding. I kept on thinking, well, duh, I understand if I want a thinner texture, I'll use a two voice. If I want the full chord, I'll use the full chord option. I was a little bit fuzzy around fixed inversion and common tone. And so I went through and made recordings or conversions to MIDI of every single one of these in the various styles. So I did the freely, the broken chords, the block chords. I did not yet get to arpeggiated or simple pad, but I think I'm at a point where I have a good enough understanding where now I can go through and tell you some things that I learned for the very first time and some things which appear to be absolutely broken in this system. My opinion. I think they're broken. And so I want to share which of these to use and which of these to never use. Oh, okay. I used at first, I thought, you know what? I'll just go a C to a C chord with a change of G in the bass. I was curious when you do a chord here, if you put a bass note, what happens there? And so it does an inversion. I did this with the two voice all the way up to the four plus. But I went and converted them into MIDI and then looked at them in the notation editor. And sure, it makes sense. C in the bass, two notes in the right hand playing the other parts of the chord. And when I went to the C chord with the G in the bass, second version, it played the G in the left hand, and it was smart enough to move the top two voices to fill out the chord so that we have a G and then we have the E and the C from the rest of that chord. Seems smart, right? Well, when I went to the next one, the two voice fixed inversion, I was like, okay, it's the exact same thing. And most of the time, I found that the two and the two fixed inversion were very similar. The next one I looked at, the two voice with the common tone, it just left what was in the right hand. And in this case, it didn't stay to those two notes. It actually spread them out. Um, and there's no real logic behind this at this point that I could tell. It wasn't trying to make sure we had more of the coverage in the second chord. We had the C and the G in the right hand all the way through. Common tone between those two chords, even though they're both C chords, it's just a change in inversion. But it kept it all the way through. It was different, and nothing else on the plugin or the session player was different than when we just did the other ones. Tighter harmonic structure on the first two, a little bit more spread out for the third one. Again, nothing too surprising. This is the three voice common tone, and this experiment kind of fell apart here because it was so simple harmonically. All the way up, there's nothing to study with common tones. So I went in and changed the chord progression to C, C with the G in the bass, G7, back to C. Very hymn-like chord progression, right? So let's go through, here we go. This is the first of these right here. C, that progression, we're in two voice. And so it went through. I also changed, we're using the broken chords for now. So similar thing, the two voices in the top, and it played, I'll actually play this one for you for a second. could actually be like a really, actually, let's mute the top thing. It could actually be a really simple etude that you're playing when you're learning the piano. I mean, it's really simple. The voice leading, which refers to when you change chords and you go to the next chord, which notes you're going to be continuing on with the voices that are there, the actual lines. And so when you have the two notes, and it's just set to the default, it's going to the natural place. It's going to the nearest kind of note function. It's not doing anything really jumping around to different places. It's pretty smart in some ways. I really appreciate the technology that went into this. Then we have the two voice fixed inversion, and I'll play that for a second. And again, if I click back and forth between these, let's not move it though. You'll see they're identical. So we already, whatever was happening with this, it was already playing in the fixed inversion thing. This is where it got the most interesting of all. And I made this region red so you could see it. This is the two voice common tone. Okay, so let's listen to this for a second. And so far, it's doing the bass change, but it's keeping the right hand exactly the same, which is what we'd expect. Goes into the G7 chord, which is G, B, D, and F. You'll notice, and most of the time I've noticed when I was using these particular ones, anything the two voice, sometimes the three voice, it doesn't actually hit the 7 at all. It just makes it like a non-7 chord. And there we go on that fourth one, which is listed as a C chord, and yet it is a C and a G and then a D. Which is, if you do the math, it's like a ninth, right? So it's not actually the C chord anymore. The common tone function in this and in at least one other place totally messed up. It's not supposed to, as far as I would think, it's not supposed to change the harmonic structure. It's supposed to look for things that are that could be moved from one to the next. So say there's a G in one chord, it keeps the G in the same place for the next one, or a C in one and a C the next. Anyway, it is blatantly changing the entire harmonic structure of this. And perhaps that's intended, but from my understanding of the basic information in the manual and what everybody else has said, that it's supposed to just look for the things that are the same between two chords and put them in the same place. It's not supposed to just change your entire harmonic structure later. Anyway, it doesn't always do that. It just does it sometimes. This next one is the three voice common tone. And I'll play this one real quick. You can even see it added a seventh in there because it had that B in the previous measure. So this one as well is adding a thing to this. And I'm not sure. I have noticed with some of these instruments, if you go one measure into another, like another harmonic content with a chord structure, and then a third one, that it will use the first and the third to make sense for the second one. And I was doing these all isolated. So I did each one of these with nothing coming next. But I still don't think it should have changed my C to a C7 or a C9 without having a C in the actual chord track. Okay, let's look at this next one. This is the full chord. And we'll look at what this did. I mean, that's like textbook voice leading for certain things where they're going to the G chord with the 7, and they're compacting right into the natural places the notes would lead. I think that actually is the way that I would probably play it myself if I were playing that. The next one is the full chord fixed inversion, and this is where we learn what the fixed inversion is really doing. So instead of taking this and, doing the voice leading into places that make sense and changing around the voice structure, it tries to keep a very consistent structure at the cost of moving the entire chord and having the bigger jump. This sounds very much like what a hymn would be in a religious context. That really, I mean, old school hymns, I would say, but it jumps and is kind of abrupt in its jump instead of going to the most natural place like a river would flow. Okay. Then I did the 4 plus. Here we go. So it keeps it there. It's doing if there's additional notes and things. And then we had the 4 plus fixed inversion. You'll hear that same jump again. It's like, yeah, it's just moving from one chord to the next without really thinking about where it was coming or where it's going. Okay, cool. I did the same thing with the freely, and I'm just going to go over here where I did the 2 voice common tone again, because it's at the same old process. Maybe it is intentional. I'm not sure. So we have that non chord track note involved with this again. I can't remember. I think with the third one. So this would be the 3 voice common tone. This is why I wonder if it's a mistake instead of on purpose. Although I will say they could have easily added a 7th into the G7 chord, but they didn't. They just left it as a G, but they got the actual C chord correct in that one. These inconsistencies drive me bonkers because there's no point in having a system that does that. There's no point in having something where, in some instances, it pulls in a 7 or a 9, and sometimes the 7 chords leave out the 7. But I would say that a few things that I'm really learning about this. Number one, if I want a really nice light texture with something, I'm going to use the 2 voice, either the 2 voice plain or the 2 voice fixed interval. But I'm not going to be likely using the common tone unless I'm really struggling or I want some sort of note in there that's not part of my chord track. Same for the 3 voice common tone. I'm just not going to be using that one at all because it could easily bring in a note that's not part of my chord structure. The full chord seems to be great, and I'm going to use the full chord most of the time as opposed to the fixed inversion because it tends to voice lead in a way that is more pleasant and less drawing attention to itself, unless I'm trying to get it to do like an organ piece or something, and I really want like a stylistic chord progression that it's just going off and doing it that certain way. If I have really complex things, I'll be using the 4 plus voice, but again, not the fixed inversion. So 4 plus, the full chord, the 2 voice, or the 2-voice fixed interval. Those are my real choices. And then I haven't experimented with the rest of this, but these hands mean I can spread it out and do different things. I left those in the default to see what was happening, but those can actually help change things around as well. Anyway, I hope this is useful. I mean, the big takeaway is that it matters and you should know what it's doing. And don't just like take its word for it. But there are certain ones of these that I think are not perfect. In fact, I think there would be no reason why I'd want that, like these, the red regions. There's no reason I'd want this D going through my C chord. But there it is. That's what it made. And hopefully this will get better. Hopefully they'll sort out some of these bugs. Again, hopefully useful. And I'll see you in the next video.